My name is Joshua Gibson, and you are listening to the Philosophical Weightlifting Podcast, a show dedicated to promoting a message of critical thinking as it pertains to strength training, nutrition, and well-being. This is done through interviews with experts, high-level athletes, coaches, and people heavily involved in strength sports and athletic development. Pull up a chair, grab a coffee, and let's get on to today's podcast. Hello and welcome to the Philosophical Weightlifting Podcast. I'm your host, Joshua Gibson, and I'm joined today by someone who, sticks out in memory because he held a workshop with Shaheen years ago in Kentucky, and I had the pleasure of going down and learning from them. That's ALee. ALee, how's it going?
Good. How are you? Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, I'm doing well. I'm not quite as good as you right now because you mentioned that you have a coffee and I don't. So I think you have that on me.
Yeah. I've been needing a lot of coffee these days because, I got a 5-month-old that keeps me up at night. So coffee's been doing the trick for me.
Yeah. What has that transition been like going from, married life to married with a kid?
It was hard at first, because I've been lifting my whole life, basically, for the better, the past 20 years of my life. And obviously when you're, just lifting and trying to do it at a high level, you're only thinking about yourself, you're not really,
Right.
you don't have other responsibilities. So, maybe last year I was before I had my kid, I was married. And I was actually going to make another run try to go for the Olympics. And so I moved up to 73, and I made some solid gains, just a few months of training. I got my body weight up to 76, and my technique was better and stronger. But then life changed, I got married, and then I was planning to have a baby, and I'm running my gym business, and just started to realize weightlifting isn't going to work out. It wasn't,
Right.
and it wasn't really the age. I was 34 last year, and like I said, I felt stronger and sharper than ever. But then life happens, and when you have all these other responsibilities, it's you're putting 50% in the training, and then 50% in your marriage, and when you have these other important responsibilities, I just had to make that life decision, and just kind of ask myself what's more important, what's actually going to make me more happy. And so then my son was born, and then it was just a lot easier to let that pride go,
Sure.
in weightlifting. So yeah, just realized that I can't just live for my personal gain at that point. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Just
I think that's a great way to kind of intro your background, right? Because not a lot of people are that committed and attached to their competitive career. But like you yourself, it makes sense given that you've competed at such a high level for such a long time. So maybe you can kind of start with how you got into weightlifting in the first place.
Okay. Where did I start? I mean, I guess I started weightlifting when I was about 16. That was my sophomore year in high school. And I found weightlifting through high school football. Actually, I played football, and my coach at the time, my football coach, this was in Gilbert, Arizona. I grew up in Arizona, and he first introduced me to weightlifting. And we would practice the Olympic movements, during, it was a PE class. It was called 4th hour football, and it was an elective that you could take instead of a general PE class. And it was available for athletes, who participated in school sports. And so we were taught the snatch and clean there, which is pretty rare, to be taught those movements, because especially at that time, it was in 2004, 2005. And so that's kind of how I started. Maybe a few months into that class, I noticed I was able to snatch and clean more than some of my bigger, stronger teammates. although I couldn't really like challenge them on like strength movements, you know, like squats and deads. And at the time I was a little guy. I was like 5'5". It's like 130 pounds. And I mean, I'm still, you know, generally like a smaller guy, but I was even smaller then. I was just like a little skinny, you know, kind of puny guy, you know, compared to my teammates. And the first time, like, I thought to myself, maybe, you know, I could be kind of good at this sport. And I'll never forget this. Like during our 4th hour football class, we had cleans on the program, and I attempted like a 225-pound clean. Right, it's like 100 kilos, and I caught it with like my knees and hips like all forward, and like, of course, we weren't like taught sound technique, you know, at that time, like in a football class, and but like I catch it like all gross, and my knees like fall to the ground, and like I just like fall straight on my ass like at the same time, like you know, like knees ass on the ground, like I'm still holding the weight like in a rack position, and I end up standing up, like I stand up with it, you know, and which felt like an eternity, by the way, and like the whole room just like erupts, you know, kind of like like you've seen those videos on Instagram, like with all those meathead football kids in the gym room, and they're just like screaming and like, you know, like hollering at their teammate, you know, after like a gross attempt at a clean or whatever. Yeah. So of course at that point I'm feeling like all pumped, you know, and jazzed about it. And so like my football coach after class comes up to me and he tells me like, you know, like, hey, you should like compete in weightlifting. So, I mean, long story short, I ended up taking like his advice, and I ended up actually getting, he actually ended up getting upset because I left football, right? And I found another like actual Olympic weightlifting coach, and just started weightlifting, and I knew I wasn't gonna get much bigger, you know. Like if I somehow like made it to like a college level, you know, I knew like I wouldn't be able to hang, you know what I mean? So like I'd probably just get crushed. But like in weightlifting, you know, I kind of realized like, oh, they got weight classes, you know, like, that's kind of tight. I can compete with people my size, and like the sport came pretty natural from the beginning. You know, I'm flexible, you know, it's mobile, fast, athletic, and all that. So that's kind of how it all started. And then that's when I met my first like real weightlifting coach. His name is Joe Michella. I don't know if you know him, but he was the president of you know him?
I'm familiar with the name. Yeah, I think he runs like Performance One or something like that.
Yep, exactly. Performance One. Yep. It's still the same name. He was a president of Arizona Weightlifting at the time, and that's where like I really started to learn more sound technique, and he took me pretty far. I worked with him from like 05 to 2010.
Wow.
Like I qualified for my, you know, first junior nationals, just a few months, you know, training with him. I think I took like 10th place or something like that, and it was just really cool because that was my first like national meet, and like I met a bunch of like, you know, like-minded weightlifters, and so like after that, you know, that motivated me to kind of continue in the sport, and yeah, and then like shortly after that, I was invited to a youth training camp in Colorado Springs at the OTC, and that's where I met Norik Vardanyan.
Express the passion that defines you. At Virus, we understand that when it comes to performance, the slightest edge can mean the difference between winning and losing. Each product is designed and tested with performance in mind. This principle inspired the technology that is infused into our apparel. Built with the intention to move with you and work for you, we create tools meant to help express the passion that defines you. The future of technology-driven apparel. Improve performance, prevent fatigue, recover faster, and go further. Virus is a proud sponsor of Josh Gibson and the Philosophical Weightlifting Podcast. Use code PHILWL for 10% off at checkout. That's PHILWL, PHILWL, for 10% off.
You know Norik, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, most people know Norik. Maybe not now because we're just not current anymore. You know what I mean? But yeah, so that's where I met Norik at the OTC when he became a resident out there. And even to this day, like Norik and I are like he's like one of my best friends, and like he really opened my eyes to weightlifting, and like for him to like befriend me at that time, like when I was just kind of starting out, like as a novice in the sport, I was just like blown away, and like I just felt honored. And I was like just mesmerized, you know, by his like movement, and he just really motivated me and got me more interested into weightlifting. And because you know his dad Yuri, you know, he was like arguably one of the greatest weightlifters of all time, and so he was a big influence in the beginning of my career in terms of just like stressing the importance of sound technique, and that like, you know, strength isn't, you know, everything. And so I just loved like the fluidity of the movement, you know, Norik and his dad had. And so it just really caught my interest in realizing like the sport involves, you know, a ton of skill, and that's like something I wanted to acquire. So then so I went back home to Arizona with my coach, and with my coach Joe, we started training more. And a couple years after that, I competed at my first junior nationals, or sorry, my second junior nationals, and that was in Tennessee. And I qualified for junior worlds in 2008. So that was like my first international competition I qualified for, and that was held in Colombia. I was a 62 kilo lifter at that time. And of course, that's like before all the weight classes changed. And I took like 10th place. But so that was just like another stepping stone or like an accomplishment for me to just kind of keep me motivated, you know, to continue. So then, and this is all with Joe still, I ended up making the senior world team in 2010, just a couple years after, in Turkey. So that was like my first real international competition at like the senior level. And that's kind of the furthest Joe took me before I switched coaches. And don't get me wrong, like Joe, I learned a lot from him. You know, he's a super intelligent coach. He kind of like knows a little bit about everything, like when it comes to like just sports in general, like there's biology, anatomy, biomechanics, you name it. He's kind of like a jack of all trades kind of guy. And I used to call him the encyclopedia Joe, because he kind of just like had basic knowledge in like all things, you know, all things sport. And I learned a lot from him, and I'm super grateful even to this day, you know, to have learned from him. You know, he started me out, and then he also started Sarah Robles, who is, you know, she's a 3-time Olympian, something like that. But yeah, we trained together for a few years when she was first starting out. But so yeah, after 2010 with Joe, I kind of just like plateaued, like I kind of just like hit a wall, so to speak. And so then I just ended up changing coaches just to kind of get to that next level. And I started working with Coach Shaheen Nasarinia. And he was in that podcast too, right?
Yeah, he was.
Yeah, so you've met him and all that. But for those, you know, those of you that don't know him, he's, you know, a 1999 world champion. He beat the famous Piros Dimas, who of course, you know, everyone knows in the sport of weightlifting. He's 3-time Olympic champion, right?
Yeah.
And I think he's now the sports performance director for USAW.
Yeah.
Along with Mike Gatone, right?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I met Shaheen in Arizona. He moved from Iran to Arizona, and I started working with him. Then I stopped competing for a couple of years and just like focused on training, because I was moving up from 62 to 69, and I just wasn't competitive in that class yet, and I just wanted to like make world teams, you know, to not compete in the C session. You know, I want to be like an A session lifter, and my ultimate goal was to make the Olympics. And just the results I had at the time just like weren't enough, so I just trained. Finally, in like 2014, decided that like I was ready. You know, I was ready after training and just not competing. And like during that 2-year period, I trained in a lot of different places like Mexico. I was with their national team for 5 months. I went to South Korea, and I trained there at the Korean National Sports University with Professor Yum for 6 months. He was a lifter back in the day. I think he did like 167 and a half and 205 as an 82 and a half lifter, and that was in the 80s. And then he became a coach. He brought up Chang Mi-dan, Sa Jae-hyuk, right? They were both Olympic champions. And he was also the national team coach for a while. And honestly, I probably learned like 90% of my technique from Professor Yum.
Wow.
Over the course of maybe 8 years up until now. And it's really cool though, because he actually brings his team to my gym every year in December for like a training camp. And we're actually planning to take my team up there at KNSU, the university, in September to train with them. So we're looking forward to that. That's going to be awesome. But yeah, Shaheen also obviously taught me so much. He taught me technique, but more like just general technique. I wouldn't say that's like his area of expertise, but the things like I really learned from Shaheen, which kind of helped me get to the next level, were just like a lot of like mental preparations. Like he like made me believe like in numbers, that I could like never imagine possible. And he just really built my mind up, and he was really good at that. And of course he wasn't just like giving me false hope. He was very serious about it, and like he believed in me and just made me to believe that they were realistic goals. And he decided to move me up from 62 to 69, and he would just tell me like I can't do anything. Like he would say like, Alex, like you can't do anything at 62 kilo body weight. Like you talk to him, he's got like that thick Iranian accent, and like and this was before you met him, so like his English wasn't that, like he didn't speak English well at the time, but like now he speaks English pretty well. But anyways, I took his advice, and like honestly at that time, like I trusted anything he would tell me. Like if he told me like lick the ground or something, it'll make you stronger, I'd probably have done it. Like stand on top of your head or something. I don't know. I probably just I just did anything. I just trusted him. I had a tremendous amount of trust in him, and probably because like he's world champ, he's an Asian champ, he beat Dimas. He clean and jerk 215, right, to beat Dimas. At 99 Worlds as an 85. So I just really looked up to Shaheen, and I'd basically do anything he'd say. And so yeah, anyways, I moved to 69, then I really started like to believe like I could hit like bigger numbers, like 140, 180, like a double body weight snatch, 400-pound clean and jerk. And the national records at the time were 135 and 167. 135 was done by, I think his name was Scott Dibert, if that rings a bell. I may be mistaken, but 167 was done by Henry Brower. He was a national champ. I don't know, like 1,000 times. That guy was like, I don't know, like 8 or 9 time champ. Don't quote me on that, but it's like a large number. So anyways, I ended up hitting 140, 180 in training, and that was like in 2013, but I was weighing like 75 kilos. Yeah. So Shaheen was like, let's go 77. But then I just couldn't like put on the weight, So like I just decided like, look, I'm ready. Let's just start competing at 69. I can cut a few kilos and still kind of maintain my numbers that I had at the time. And so then I ended up being accepted at the OTC as a training special. And Norik had just come back from Armenia after he had made the Olympics in 2012 for Armenia. And of course, we kept in close contact like the entire time. And I kind of sort of motivated him to come back and compete for the US again. And so we like made this plan, that we could go out there to the OTC and just like take the top spots in ranking and like make the 2016 Olympic team. And so anyways, yeah, we go out for a training special and we end up getting accepted and we become off complex residents. So like you could either stay on complex or off complex, but we chose off complex by choice because like we didn't want to live in a small like dorm room, you know, like we're not like 18 years old anymore. We didn't want like a little, you know, we needed a little more freedom. So, you know, we ended up like renting a house together and like, I don't know, man, that 2-year period we lived out there, it was just like the training was like just the time of my life.
Yeah.
You know, just like training hard, like winning competitions, breaking records, and all while like partying every weekend. You know, we worked hard and we played hard for sure. And we were like really taken care of out there at the same time. You know, we were the only 2 male athletes who got like 3 massages a week, you know, for free, all 3 meals, making a stipend. Cause like you had to meet like a certain criteria in terms of like results, right? To get like all the stuff for free. And so we were just really happy about that. And like our house rent was only like $700 a month.
Wow.
You know, so I mean, like we weren't like rolling in the dough by any means, but let's be real, like weightlifting is a poor sport. It's a super poor sport, but that's one of the best memories of my career from 2014 to like 2016, you know, just training with the boys and just with all your buddies, you know, living that weightlifter life and just doing it at a high level. But like, so after that 3-month training special, I had to like, I wasn't like an official resident yet. I had to kind of like prove myself at the American Open finals. And that was like my comeback meet after not competing for a few years. And that's where I won my like first real national level competition. Actually, I did win university nationals one time, but that doesn't really count. So, but anyways, I ended up doing like 131 and I did a 305 total. I clean jerk 174. And so I break the total record by 1 kilo. It was 304 before that by Caleb Williams, which he was a super strong athlete. You know, I think he front squatted like 220 easily. I was front squatting like 200 maybe max.
Yeah. I think Caleb was a transition to powerlifting
right
after weightlifting.
Yeah, that dude was just like freaky strong, you know.
Yeah,
and he was a lot stronger than me, but fortunately I was able to beat that record, and then that pretty much landed me a spot as like a full-time resident. But as long like the catch was I had to follow the national team coaches program. So I had to stop doing Shane's program. I had to follow Zygmunt Smaltert was the head coach there. He's the former head coach for Poland. And but yeah, so I had to follow his program, and I just kind of plateaued again, right? After like training with him for 5 months, I didn't increase my total at all. Like I got worse. And so, because like it was kind of like an old Soviet system. And I think it's a good system for beginners, but not necessarily for like elite level lifters. You know, like the program consisted of just like super high volume and reps, and like at a low intensity. Like they had a ton of exercises. But looking back, I feel like it helped me kind of like a lot to prepare for like high intensity training again.
Yeah.
Because like Shaheen's training is like super tough. It's probably the hardest training I've ever endured. And like, to be honest, I think I would have gotten hurt had I kept doing that style of training forever, like during that whole time. So it was kind of nice to just kind of get my base back and let my body recover. So, but yeah, I built a good base during that 5 months, and then but eventually I was just like not satisfied because my total did increase. And like the kind of like the final straw with working with Zygmunt was when I bombed out at the Pan Am Games, which was a qualifier for 2015 in Houston. And so I needed to get back into the rankings and nationals was like a month away from that, and I needed to do well there to qualify for worlds. So I decided to just go back home to Arizona. I was like, screw this. I can't. I'm not getting better. And like, I have to do well at nationals. So I go back to Arizona. I train with Shaheen again. And I had only like a month before nationals to train. And so it was a world qualifier. And so I had a good base, I was ready to train super high, like intensity again. And so, but then I go to nationals, I end up losing to CJ. CJ Cummings. He breaks my total record of 305. He did like, I think 306. And like, for some reason, like the qualifying system at the time, it changed again. I don't remember exactly the criteria, but it was weird. Like it didn't benefit like our weight class. And even that 306 that CJ did was still not enough like to make the team, like even though on like paper it was better maybe than like the other lifters that were in different weight classes. Like when you're talking about like Sinclair. But so then I had like 2 months to prepare for the university nationals, and which was like the last chance qualifier for Houston Worlds. And that period was probably the hardest 2 months of training in my life. Like, especially after just training like only high volume all the time, even though like it prepared me, like the beginning of like high intensity training is just rough. So, but anyways, so Shaheen prepares me, and in like 2 months I go to universities, and I end up breaking CJ's 306 record with the 308. The 308 was the total I needed to get me on the world team, and it was an 8-man team at the time, because now it's a 10-man squad, obviously. But so I end up breaking that. I get on the team, and so we get invited back to the OTC for a world team camp, and this time they like allowed me and Shaheen to go there and like allow him to come train me there, because I'm not a resident, right? We're just going there for a camp. And so we get to go there a little earlier. I had like another 2 months to prepare for worlds, and like that's when like my total shot up like super high. Like in that 2 months, while I was at training camp, I did 145 snatch and 182 clean and jerk. I missed 185 a couple times. Like I snatched 150 off the blocks.
Wow.
I cleaned 190, jerked 190 off the blocks. I totaled over 327, right? 45, 82, 327 in training, weighing like 72. And like Shaheen stressed a lot about my body weight. That's another thing, like with Zygmunt, like for us to train light, like he liked me to train like at 70 kilos, or like 69 and a half. And like that affected me in a negative way, like, because, you're not really taking advantage of your competition weight,
Right.
Like you have to train somewhat heavy to be able to endure the training load, and then like you just got to cut it the last second, so you don't lose it too much. But yeah, like if you cut too early and train with like a low body weight like too long, you're not taking advantage of your weight class. Like MMA fighters or wrestlers, like those guys walk around like, how heavy do they walk around? Like 20 pounds over their actual weight class. Granted, they get to weigh in like 24 hours before. We only get 2 hours before our competition, so we can't cut like that much in a short period. And then like with lifting weights too, right? That would just take too much out of us. So, but it's kind of the same idea. Like you got to take advantage of your weight class. And yeah, that's something that Shaheen stressed a lot, and that helped me a lot. Just body weight alone. Like Shaheen would tell me I need to cut in the sauna like at least 500 to 800 grams, like for a lighter lifter. Like a heavier guy, you can cut like 1 or 2 kilos, right? And like the percentage ratio would be like the same for a heavier versus lighter guy. But yeah, I mean, going back to Shaheen, like he was the best like he knew what it would take for me to succeed, you know.
Right.
I ended up totaling 316 at Worlds. So and I feel like I had more in the tank, but that put me in the number one in the rankings, pound for pound. But of course, at the end of the quad, Norick ended up passing me by a kilo, and then Kendrick Ferris passed Norick by a kilo. So I ended up like third in the overall rankings prior to the Olympics.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, we only ended up with one male spot for the Olympics in 2016. So Kendrick ended up becoming, you know, 3-time Olympian. I mean, deservedly so. You know, he was one of the greatest American weightlifters of all time. So, but we would have had 3 spots if everyone else like did what they were supposed to at Worlds. But that's a whole other topic in itself. But yeah, I competed another 3 years after that. You know, all while having a gym business, and I tried to make another Olympic run, but I think I made a mistake by going down to 67 when the classes changed. You know, instead of moving up to 73, and that was honestly to avoid competing against CJ. You know, because he just like shot up to another level.
Yeah.
And the new system only took 1 per weight class. But I could have played the system a little better. You know, I should have competed with him at the 73 just to get solid points, and just maybe move down to 67 for a couple competitions, you know, to maybe make it as a 67, because we're only required to have 2 international comps totals, like for a given weight class, to be like eligible for the Olympics. So, but I had no business being in that light of a weight class, like with my height, and I was getting older. Like the better move would have been for me to go up, you know, especially if you want like longevity in the sport.
Hey, what's up, weightlifters? Danny here, founder of Onyx Weightlifting Co., a leather accessories company specializing in weightlifting gear. In our shop, we make gear that doesn't get in the way of your performance, because we understand that hitting lifts requires your full attention. Our straps, wrist wraps, and belts are designed to be comfortable and reliable, so all you need to do is make lifts. Thanks for listening to our friend Josh's podcast. You can continue to support him by visiting our online shop at onyxstraps.com and using his code PHILWL. That's PHILWL at checkout. See you on the platform.
I mean, like last year I was going to go for another run again, right? Like I was saying earlier, moved up to 73, made solid gains, but life happened.
Yeah. I mean, and that's a really interesting, and I think unusual, but I don't mean unusual in a negative way. It's unusual as in like it's really prolific to be able to come up training under and with such successful and well-recognized teams and coaches. And you mentioned, you know, at some point deciding to open your own gym or to start your own business. What kind of spurred that on, and when did that happen?
So I actually started that in 2000. It was right after the 16 Olympics. So I didn't make the 16 Olympics, and then I came back home, and because they got rid of the Olympic Training Center for weightlifting, and so I opened my gym in 2000, just the end of 2016, and so that the quad before this quad, I was competing and running the gym, so that also didn't help me with my training, and like, because I know like I know how much effort it takes, right, to be at the top level. Like you don't have time for anything else. So that was actually kind of hard to juggle, kind of both. And so like I realized that like distributing the time and effort into weightlifting and my business, and then now like then with my family, like you're just not going to have good results in any aspect, you know?
Right.
And it's just like ultimately not going to make me happy. And so, but now I have the most joy in my life than I ever had. Like getting married, having my baby boy, Brandon, and like running my business, putting 100% effort into that, like makes me so much happier now. Like just being able to provide for my family, you know, especially because like we decided that like my wife, Michelle, should be a stay-at-home mom, and we want to just raise our child 100%. And now that, you know, that I'm 100% in like my gym, I see that my athletes are getting better. The gym is growing faster than it ever has because I'm able to put in, you know, just all my time and energy into that. And then that in turn, now I'm able to provide for my family. And like I said, nothing has brought me more joy, you know, like just raising my kid. Like when I see him wake up in the morning and he's got this smile on his face and he's all well fed and everything, like that brings me more happiness than any American record I've ever broken. You know, it's not even close. But like I don't regret my weightlifting career at all, you know, like not making the Olympics even. I think it made me humble myself more, and it's allowed me to grow more, like as a husband, a father, as a coach, you know, and just understanding that I'm going to fail at some aspects in life, you know, but the important thing is just, it's not all about yourself, you know,
Right.
It's about serving others, whether it's at your job, your family, your friends. So yeah, I just learned to put others first, and by putting others first, I believe it's made me a better person. It just makes me happier at the end of the day.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's super insightful. And, you know, a lot of the people who listen to this podcast are, I would say, mostly coaches. And then because mostly coaches and athletes, they're most likely in weightlifting, working in weightlifting, running a gym, running a club, or some combination of. What's your advice to them, kind of people who are starting out? And we've talked about it before we started recording that, you know, for you, when you're a 4-time world team member and a 4-time Pan Am team member, and you've had multiple national records and you've won, you know, world universities, it's different when you run a club or open a gym and market yourself, and also like your background allows you to be successful
Right.
coaching. What's your advice to people who are newer, less experienced, or don't quite have the name to promote themselves?
So yeah, obviously, like if you were successful as an athlete, that will bring, you know, it'll be easier to promote, you know, your gym, right? Or as a coach, that will bring in the athletes, the clientele, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to stay, you know? And like, I've changed my mind about this a lot. Like what I think makes a good coach or a good teacher, like as long as you can teach weightlifting well and you know what you're talking about, you get people better, that's going to bring people in, you know, and that's going to have people stay, and that's how you're going to grow. But I've changed my mind about this a lot, where like what makes a good coach or a good teacher is someone who is apt to teach, right? Like being able to take something complicated like weightlifting and teaching it like in a simple, efficient manner, you know, just taking something hard and making it easier to understand, right? Like if you're able to do that, you'll go far. Like this is why I'd stay away from those who just want to use they just want to be smart. You know, there's some coaches out there, they just use like all these big scientific terms, and like they try to go like super deep into things when teaching lifting, because it's just like, but like it's just going to confuse you, you know? You don't need to be like this super, super smart guy or act all super smart. Like, especially when teaching something complicated like that, it's just going to go right over your head. Like you got to be able to make it simple. And like weightlifting, right, looks simple. When like Lasha lifts that weight, like, man, that looks like he did it with ease, and it looks like a pretty simple movement. But like, you and I both know it's super complicated, right?
Right.
Like holding positions and like knowing what muscle groups are being used to hold certain positions. Like, you know, I mean, take like internal rotation, for example, right? Like if I'm teaching someone how to internally rotate, like I'm not going to explain to them that like you need to like internally rotate the humerus, you know, and the humerus is connected to the glenohumeral joint, subscapula, you know, is the primary muscle used, whatever, to internally rotate the shoulder? Like, that's just going to go right over your head. You don't need that kind of explanation. Like, that's good for me to know as a coach, but when you explain that to like Joe Sixpack or whatever, right, you're going to make it simple, right? You can just say something like, okay, rotate the wrist, elbows, shoulders like this, and maybe show them, or like physically put them into the position, or, you know, explain like you're squeezing the shoulder blades closer to your spine, right? Something simple so you can get your point across. But like, that to me is a better teacher than someone who's just trying to act smart, right? Like, I feel like it's just like an exercise of like puffing themselves up sometimes. And truth be told, I don't think those kind of people really even know what they're talking about. You know, those are the types that actually miss the whole point. And, you know, they just want to say like, hey, look how smart I am. And they just throw a few big words at you. You know, like, here's another thing. I used to think that a coach who was never a weightlifter or a good weightlifter could be a good coach. You know what I'm saying? Like, a coach, I used to think that, I've changed my mind about this now, but before I used to think that a coach who was never a weightlifter or a good weightlifter could be a good coach. But now I think that's completely false. Like, I actually think people who were like blessed with the natural like athletic talent, it's harder for them to be a good coach, because oftentimes they don't understand how something could be so difficult, you know, because like, to them, it's just naturally easy for them. Like, it's just so intuitive to them. Like, they would say like, I don't know, like, it's easy, right? Just like, see, just do it like this. Like, I don't know, like, you're jumping back in the snatch, just land in the same spot.
Right.
You know?
Right.
Like, you can't learn like that, especially if you don't have like a lot of God-given talent in athletics, you know? Like, if you look at some of the greatest coaches of all time, right, in other professional sports, like the NBA or NFL or whatever, the coaches who were ex-pro athletes are probably the least successful coaches.
Right. Right.
I don't know, like Isaiah Thomas, right?
Yeah.
Isaiah Thomas, basketball player, great NBA Hall of Famer, terrible coach. He did not succeed at coaching, right? Someone like Elgin Baylor, right? Played for the Lakers, Hall of Famer, terrible coach, right? So the ones who weren't pro athletes who became coaches are usually the most successful, like, in terms of their results, right? Like, I was just watching this documentary, and like, they highlighted Bill Belichick, right? Bill Belichick, the head coach for the Patriots.
Yeah.
Like, he is one of the greatest NFL coaches of all time, right? But he wasn't a pro baller, or he didn't have like all this athletic ability, you know, athletic ability. So like, he understood that football is very difficult, right, at a high level. And he was able to understand to teach and coach something that takes, you know, incredible athletic ability and high IQ, like football, and teach it in a way that people can understand, right, to achieve it at a high level. So you can still be a great teacher, right? A good teacher is someone who's able to break things down that are hard and make it easy, not to just confuse. Like, someone that can see both sides of the coin, where like, as a naturally gifted athlete, he was just born into it, right? So they didn't necessarily have to go through all of like the same hurdles.
Right.
But like, or like, another example, okay, is like, if I'm going to learn a foreign language, right? Say I'm trying to learn a foreign language like Japanese or something. And I believe like, I'd rather learn from like, say, like an American teacher who teaches Japanese,
Yeah.
and whose native tongue isn't Japanese, but learned perfect Japanese, right? Like, that's the guy I want to learn from over like a native Japanese speaker. Because, you know, the Japanese guy just grew up on it. He didn't necessarily learn all the like grammatical rules that you need to know, like the American guy did, right?
Right.
So the Japanese guy just knows his language through like experience, you know, because everyone speaks that language. He grew up speaking that language, you know, it's intuitive to him. So yeah, you don't necessarily have to have been a great athlete, and there's hundreds of testimonies to that, you know. Yeah, I guess the ultimate coach would be someone who's was a good athlete and learned how to coach,
Right.
and learn how to teach.
Yeah, and hearing you say that, like, that all makes sense. And you know, coming from your perspective, someone who's worked with a lot of coaches, spent a lot of time training and competing at the highest levels, and then started coaching at the highest levels.
Mhm.
What, as someone who is a coach and who has coached, you know, really great athletes, what have been some of the biggest struggles you faced as a coach, and then also as a business owner, knowing that, you know, getting really good and having a lot of success in weightlifting doesn't teach you how to be successful running a business in weightlifting?
Exactly. And so for me, because I've been coaching for a while now, even during my weightlifting career, I was still coaching, you know, like coaching classes and all that. And
Right.
I've learned a lot. Like before, I was not good at coaching weightlifting. Even though I was, you know, a good weightlifter, I wasn't a good coach in the beginning. And I just made a post about this on one of my Instagrams, actually. And it was I put like quote of the day for coaches and athletes, and it was titled "Don't be a know-it-all." And that's kind of the mentality I had growing up, you know. I felt like because I was good at weightlifting, I knew everything, you know. But
Right.
only fools think they've learned everything, you know, and have it all figured out, right? But it's crazy because, like, the more you learn, I'm sure you heard the saying, the more you learn, the more you realize you don't know.
Right.
You know,
Right.
like after spending like the past 18 years studying and like practicing weightlifting, like now I find I say like, this is how much I don't know about weightlifting. And so I think that's the mentality you have to grow, because it's ironic, because the more you learn, you begin to realize the less you know.
Right.
So like you actually know less in a sense, like in your own sight, right? Like this is why people like who know a lot tend to be more humble, you know. People who don't know, or people who know just like a little bit, or they just learn a couple key things, they're just proud because they get the feeling of like, yeah, I pretty much know everything. I have arrived, you know. And so yeah, I remember thinking to myself like this not too long ago, like that, like I've been doing this forever. I'm a good athlete, you know. I'm never really going to have a big revelation in my life, you know, when it comes to weightlifting. Like I'm not going to have a big epiphany because I pretty much know all the basics, and like even a lot of the small details, like nothing's going to blow me away ever again, right? Like I won't learn anything super groundbreaking because I've been lifting and doing this for so long. But like now, like I would never make a statement like that now, because like every year I keep learning something new. You know, I keep learning something new on how to be like a better weightlifting coach. And so I guess you just have to realize that you'll never learn everything, right? In any particular subject. Like you
Right.
just won't, because life is just too short, you know?
Yeah.
So-
I think one way to safeguard against that is to have people around you who happen to know more than you.
Exactly.
And that's what I found, and I'm sure that's how you feel and how you felt, you know, and you kind of rattled off when you were giving your background, the number of people and places you've worked with and at.
Yep.
And you know, when you can talk to someone who has done more, seen more, has been in the game twice as long, and you hear them talk about it, you're like, wow, I either don't understand that, or I can't connect the dots like that, and it doesn't make sense. And the more time you spend around, and you're like, okay, now I see what I didn't know because I'm able to connect the dots and start to understand what they know a little more clearly.
Yeah. But here's the thing with that too. Like that's all true. But look, I can learn from people who know less than me.
Sure. Yeah.
Who are less than me, or who have less knowledge in weightlifting than me. I can learn a lot from them. You know.
Yeah. Well, and
Yeah, like I can
I'd be,
learn from people who's
no, I think that's right. I think that's entirely true. And kind of on the back end of that, what are some of the things that you're really interested in right now, or what are some of the things that kind of occupy your thinking as a coach or as a business owner? Like, what are things you're hoping to do, or hoping to improve at?
yeah, so I'm just trying to improve, look, I'm still trying to just be ever learning, just have the attitude. One thing I struggle in is like promoting the business.
Hmm.
So I've been trying to be more current about like I feel like I have pretty extensive knowledge in weightlifting, but I need to find a way, and I've been working on finding a way to promote that better, right? Whether that's online or, creating content. So that's like a whole nother avenue that I've been working on, is like learning how to create content like on a video editor and stuff. And so like that's been a big challenge for me, is like it's one thing to get it all on video, but then having to break it up and all that, and so that people can digest it. Like people have short attention spans, you know what I mean? So you got to be able to like break it up and get your point across within like a minute. So things like
Right.
that has been a challenge for me, and that's something that I'm trying to get better at. And just understanding that I can't do everything myself.
Hmm.
Like if I want my gym to grow, I have to give responsibilities to other people. And that's actually another thing I've changed my mind on. Because like one of my coaches told me throughout my career, like, hey, don't let like anyone know all your secrets.
Hmm.
Like guard your knowledge, protect your knowledge, so like the others don't know too much. Like I used to have that mentality, and I think that's a terrible mentality to have. Right? They want you to like protect your knowledge, like kind of like the Chinese weightlifting team. Like it's like the idea of like we want to make sure like nobody gets better than us. Make sure like they stay below us in terms of like results. But like, hey, don't you want to grow the sport? Like, how do we grow the sport?
Right.
Like, how do you grow your business? Like, you have to share everything you know to everyone. And we shouldn't have that mentality where you just want to be better than everyone. Like I'm all for competition. I love competing and doing my best to win in any competition, like even a simple board game. I play for fun, but also to win, right? And so I don't believe the idea that everyone should get a medal or be rewarded, right, for your shitty performance. But in terms of like hating when someone is better than me, like I wish I changed my mind about that when I was competing. Because look, if everyone else gets better, it's going to push my limits too. It's going to make me better, or at least make me want to be even better. And like now as a teacher and a coach and just a lover of the sport, I want to share with everyone everything I've learned. Like I have 3 coaches at my gym that help me to run my business. And because I know I can't do everything myself, right? And I know that I need a team and I need people to help me grow. But like, do you think I keep some things from them so they don't like surpass my knowledge? Like, no, I tell them everything I know because I want them to be the best coaches they can be,
Right.
and that's only going to help my gym business anyways, right? It's better for even myself. And I tell everything I know to my athletes so they can reach their fullest potential, like Kaiser, right? Kaiser, he's our best athlete, best weightlifter at our gym. And I told him, like, my goal, you need to pass me up, and just reach your fullest potential. I want my records to be broken. Like it's already been broken. CJ's broke all my records, and that's great. Like we should want people to advance and grow the sport. And we can only do that by sharing our knowledge and helping and encouraging athletes and coaches, right? Take it to the next level.
Yeah. And I have 2 questions off that. The first is almost a little bit of an aside, but what do you think Kaiser can do? What do you think his potential is?
Man, honestly, the sky's the limit for him. Like numbers wise, I told him, dude, you can snatch 210, you can clean and jerk 245.
Yeah.
And like, what's funny is that I told Norik this like maybe 3-4 years ago, and he just like laughed at me.
Yeah.
But after this meet, when we went to Colorado, he's from Colorado, and after his performance, right, he went for that 198 and just barely missed that 230. After that, Norik was like, man, you're right. Like he really can do something like that, you know?
Yeah.
You know, maybe he doesn't believe in 210, but at least like he never thought he'd be like in the 200 range snatch, you know?
Hmm.
Like I've never coached anyone or had anyone in my gym that was more naturally gifted than I was.
Hmm.
You know, like his limit is way higher than mine. So
Yeah. I think everyone could agree with you, especially after seeing how he lifted at nationals and just kind of watching him develop. I mean,
Yep.
he's an insane athlete, an insane weightlifter, and probably the only person in the near future who can challenge Shane Hammond's records.
Right.
I don't think anyone else has been able to do that at all or get even close to it. He seems like the only guy.
Yep.
And then oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
No, I was going to ask, kind of transitioning a little bit to the gym. You talked about bringing on or having, you know, multiple coaches and trying to develop it and increase the amount of work you do in the sense of like putting out content and marketing. What's the plan with ALee Athletics? Like what's your goal with the gym and with the brand? What would you like to do?
Yeah, obviously my main goal is to build our team right at the highest level. But they're not necessarily the ones who pay the bills. But by having good athletes, good lifters who all have sound technique and high achievements, that's going to bring in just the hobbyists, you know, people who want to learn, or like not even just, you know, making the best weightlifters, but one of my main goals is to be able to teach technique in weightlifting, to be able to do it in a safe manner. Right? Because like having good technique, your success rate is going to be higher and you'll be able to lift more weight, but also is to avoid injury and to be able to do it for a long time as a hobby and have fun doing it. And it's only fun when your movements, you know, you're moving right and you're not hurting, you know? So I think if I can just work on that and make sure everyone's kind of up to par on the movement, and at the same time, you know, our team is growing. You know, we send some athletes to international meets, maybe an Olympian. That's kind of like my goal.
Yeah. And so what could people expect, knowing that that's your goal, right? Knowing that you want to kind of develop a bigger team, kind of spread movement that can be more efficient and for other people be safer. What's that look like? Kind of what can people expect, you know, in the next few months from ALee Athletics and what you guys are doing?
I mean, that's why I train my coaches, you know, to be able to kind of be on the same page as far as how we teach the technique, you know, giving everyone equal, you know, feedback and things like that. And that's where like, a lot of my coaches help me with, because I can't help everyone. You know, I'm mostly working with the team, right? So like if I'm coaching everyone all at once every day, I'm just going to burn out, you know?
Right.
So that's why, you know, I'm making it I stress the importance of my coaches knowing everything I know and even surpassing my knowledge, right? So that way we can all help everyone, especially when you have a high volume of clientele, you know what I mean?
That makes sense. And then maybe you can even answer this, because you mentioned it when you mentioned Shaheen much earlier in the podcast. Why'd he end up choosing Arizona?
You know, I'm not exactly sure, but I mean, it's not the greatest place to live in Iran. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's a super, you know, I don't like to get political, but it's a super totalitarianist, you know, dictatorship of a country. You know what I mean? And so like anyone who lives there, and even though he got treated well, because he was, you know, a renowned, you know, he was, you know, kind of went down in history as one of the the best weightlifters in Iran. Like, it's different living here, coming to America and experiencing, you know, more liberty and more opportunity and just having more freedom, you know. It's so I think that that kind of had something to do with it. Because like, he can go back, doesn't choose to, because let's be real, this is the greatest nation in the world.
Right.
You know what I mean? I mean, no nation's perfect, right? Everyone's got their faults, but like, if I were to live anywhere in the, like, I've traveled a lot around into other countries, and like, there's no place like America, you know. I feel like we are the most blessed nation.
Yeah, no, I think that makes sense. And I was almost wondering, just because it seems so, I don't know, it's just unreal that he happened to choose Arizona. You happened to be there, get connected, and then you guys, you know, ended up kind of developing this like relationship that has kind of impacted weightlifting as a sport, not just, you know, a few athletes.
Right. Yeah, I mean, he took he helped Morgan King get to the Olympics. You know, he started Kaiser from scratch, right? Kaiser was just he was a collegiate swimmer, believe it or not, right? And he started at 21, and then he was able to take someone like that in 7 years, you know, become one of the best super heavyweights of all time, you know. Yeah, and he helped me a great deal. I probably wouldn't be where I'm at today if it wasn't for him.
Right.
So yeah.
And I think it's very evident, you kind of the way you talk about it, and the way the way it kind of represents itself at meets, and just, you know, on social media and all that other stuff. So if people are interested in kind of digging into all the stuff you're putting out, digging into your content and what you offer, and then kind of seeing, you know, the development of it over the next few months and next few years, where can people go to find all this stuff?
Yeah, you could just follow me on ALee, ALEE _weightlifting on Instagram. And I've been making I've been trying to make more posts on just teaching weightlifting, and, you know, giving cues and just my philosophy on technique and all of that. So like I said, I'm trying to get better at promoting that and showing that, and being able to present that in a way that's digestible and easy to understand. And so, yeah, just look out for those, you know, those kinds of things. And I offer, you know, even online programming. I offer virtual coaching, pretty much any way I can to, you know, help grow the sport, help people get better at weightlifting. And you can also check out my website, aleeathletics.com, if you want to sign up for virtuals or whatnot. And yeah, hope that you guys can just give me a follow.
Yeah, and for everyone who listened to this and they are also interested in following me, you can follow me on Instagram at Josh_PHILWL. All the links to help our sponsors and to help the podcast grow, that'll be down below. Thanks again for listening to another episode of the Philosophical Weightlifting Podcast, and we will catch you guys next week.